And now we've been talking about how to work together, how to come alongside others and listen to each other, all that we've just been talking about. So on the back of all that, we are now going to earth it, try to anyway, with our discussion about multi-generational partnership. So that was why we focused on the children earlier on. We really feel that God is talking to us about this. We would be very interested to hear what God is saying to your groups. So we are going to have a panel. I'm going to introduce our panel, who are going to share a little bit. Liz is going to host some questions to our panelists, and then we will continue our discussion in the groups. So in the last 2 years, there's been established a multi-agency partnership of friendship under the Ethne group. It's called the Ethne Children's Group, and it's trying to pull together all sorts of different partners and agencies who currently work with children, have masses of resources, and are really involved with that. And Marsha and Shan, come forward, are part of that group and have been heading it up. So they've met together in December as well at the Ethne meeting. And then we have Onassis. Yes, we do. Didn't even know that. I'm going to call him forward.
Yeah, this is, they don't know this. This is
a big surprise, by the way.
Some of them knew a little.
This is embarrassing. Thank you very much, Onassis. Because Onassis knows an awful lot about children's ministry as well. Children in Prayer is one of the ministries, one of the many hats that Onassis wears. So you must be up here as well. And Jason's going to come. Is that right?
We can't. Are you? Or
yeah. I was wondering who the fourth chair is.
You.
Okay, the fourth chair.
So this is one of those things that hopefully is going to work. So what I want to do is throw out a question and then give a chance for each one of these folks to interact with the question. And then we want to throw it to the tables and let you discuss the questions and kind of the issues at your table. And then we'll follow Jose's model, and we'll leave enough time at the end to get a little bit of input back. So what you want to do is you discuss at your table, maybe come up with one key thought that you want to share with the group. Okay, so first of all, we're talking about partnering across generations. God is a God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? He's a multi-generational God.
After your question, I want you to hand it over.
Oh.
So just hang on to that.
Okay.
And then when you're finished, give it to them.
Oh, thank you. Good. Okay. So God's a multi-generational God. So his view is long view. So we live within our generation, but our generation overlaps. We just did the Discovery study that looked at 2 generations, right? It was an older man and a young boy, right? So thinking about this from your context, I would just want you to reflect about maybe what are the challenges of seeing multiple generations connecting through prayer and towards mission. We heard the story Jenny shared about this boy that's planted over 100 churches. And there was a snippet there of the reaction of these older people to this young man showing up in this meeting, right? So there was some things going on there about what's this young boy doing here. That gives you a hint that maybe there's some challenges at seeing multiple generations working together. If you look around this room, there's not a whole lot of really young people here, right? We're heavy on the white hair end, I think. So why? What are some of the things? And from your ministries, now I know these right here have been involved in various ways, some much more than others, but in trying to see children and youth engaged in not only prayer but also mission. So let me start with maybe with Onassis. Would that be all right? And just speak to what you feel like maybe are some of the challenges of seeing multiple generations engaging together in prayer and missions, or maybe if you want to tell successes, like how you have seen God overcome that and examples of that.
Yeah.
Here, use this one. Do you want this one?
Yeah, it's on.
There. Yeah.
One of the challenges it's not a new challenge. It's been the challenges there right from the time the modern church has birthed. So the church in general has given least importance or very less importance on children. As you know, I basically started a ministry of children's pastor And usually in the church or a mission setup, more than 90% of the funds or the importance is given to the adult ministry, whereas less than 10% of the funds are being given to the children's ministry. On the area, I'm not talking about the fund, but also when you see the results of people being born again, even in this group, people who are born again before the age of 15 will be more. Statistically, 85% of the people born again are before the age of 15 or 17. But the funds are used for the people who are adult. Even for the unreached people group, strategies, we talk about strategy, core group, prayer networking, all has been happening on the adults. Very less focus has been there for the children because we have not birthed out, we have kept the children only on the backstage, in the sense only on the Christmas day they will come and give a show, or a VBS, or a Children's Sunday they would come and perform there, rather than seeing them as a huge resource for us. I would say they are like the frontliners in the mission. Every church has been blessed with so much of children, and we have just given time to entertain and get entertained them, and then get entertained through them, rather than actually giving the biblical principle of they being champions of prayer, champions of this, sharing the gospel. So we have failed. First of all, we need to, that's a systemic failure on the missions and the church. So beyond that, there are a lot of ministries working among the children are doing it. It goes well when there is a huge children's network. The Children in Prayer or mission goes well when there is a good network which is already there. Like World Vision had a huge network of children. First of all, they support the children, like Compassion. What the Compassion do is to support the children. Also, they have Bible clubs every week, and they give spiritual input in those clubs, which the children take help, and also go as they go and plant churches, they go and have prayer. So one of the examples which I would say is we have worked through different networks of introducing children in prayer. One of the things that we do is we don't actually do, we partner with Compassion, with World Vision and other major, if there is a huge church, it's got about a couple of hundreds of children, we do that. If we take them to the community or in their own community, we ask them to write the do's and the don'ts of the community. For example, what do you like your community to be? So a child in a village will write that we want clean drinking water, we want good roads, we don't want dadas to abuse our mothers, something like that, and we make that as a prayer point, and we ask the community to pray and ask them to pray every week. And after a couple of years, we find that every prayer point which they have targeted has been answered. A government comes up with a new water tank, with new roads being laid, and there's no, a village without, husbands not abusing the wife, we have documented. And how alcohol-free village. It's been happening because the children are praying. It is happening not in a huge, big networks, but small communities wherever a strategic children are educated to pray. So we communicate these kinds of stories to when we go to the children's meeting to share. So one of the challenges we find is also we don't have a church. We are actually prayer mobilizers. The church has to give us platform. The pastors need to give us a platform to work, and the network needs to give it. So we do find children's ministry is still on the backside.
Jenny, you want to share something? I'll pass this to the other side when you're done.
I think from my perspective, I feel really burdened. And I think there's a cultural element to this. We won't know, some of you don't know, but I used to live in Argentina, and there are many Latin Americans here. And it's such a relational culture, and it's so different to my own culture, that I think that woke me up a bit, because children are very included in Latin American culture. They're out at midnight having food with the family, which is very different to my culture. That inclusivity, I think, is a key, and I think that's what's quite heavy on my heart, that we include everybody. So when anybody's missing, whether it's an ethnic group or it's an age group, that bothers me, because I think it bothers God. So that's my motivation, the inclusivity of everybody. And my own story as well. I became a Christian when I was about 6 years old through a Christmas carol on Selling Moses. Away in a manger, be with me, Lord Jesus, I ask you to pray. Get me ready for heaven at the end, at kind of the words of the song. And I think that's true of many people too. Children, like you said, children are very open, like Eli and Samuel's story. Samuel was open, and I think many children around the world are open to spiritual things, to hear the voice of God, and it's up to us as the adults to facilitate that and to work with that, which God is already doing. And the other part to my feelings, the inclusivity, the childlikeness, and the fact that the population of the world is very young. So as a strategy, it just makes sense. Why would we be crazy enough not to reach out to the majority of the world that are under the age of 20? The majority of our unreached people groups are young. So we're not talking about the older people. So from every angle, to me, focusing on youngsters is on God's heart, and it's very strategic. So I'm just exploring ways of how we can facilitate that, because I don't work directly in these ministries, but I see the need. So that's why I want to be an advocate for this, that we would be a bit more in tune with what God's heart is in all our organisations.
So, interestingly enough, I've just come from Bristol, which is a city on the move as far as God is concerned. He seems to be working in Bristol, and it's not actually anything to do with my ministry, but I've just been looking at the two churches that we're involved in, and the one is the mother church, if you like, and the one is the little church plant. And the mother church has got all the traditional sort of Western culture church, where you have the Sunday school and the youth group, and everything is totally separate. Children aren't in for the sermon, and they are in as part of the worship, but sort of on the edge. And then the real worship happens after they leave. I'm not criticizing the church. It's a wonderful church, and this is one of the church plants is the one that I'm about to talk about. But the church plant, it's interesting. It's quite a small group. It's young people, like late 20s, mostly in leadership. And when the kids are in the church, they're treated like adults. So at the beginning of a service, you'll be asked to chat to the person next to you about what God's done this week. So then you're accountable. Then during those stories are brought to the front, and little kids will come up and share their stories of what God's done that week. And then if there's some need from those stories, like a prayer need or someone needs healing, the kids are involved with praying in the church for healing, for whatever the needs are. So they're treating even tiny kids as adults in terms of spiritual maturity. And then, just kind of on a sideline, I'm South African, I'm African, so maybe Moses would know as well. Our kind of view of children is that children are kind of on the side, and you don't really listen to their advice or their input. And so, it's quite a big challenge for us, especially working in Africa. Like, how do we take that step of saying, okay, the child can come up to the pulpit and do the preaching or the teaching or the praying or whatever it is. So I guess those are some of the things that...
Thank you, Sharon. I think because this is a multi-generational opportunity for us, I was reminded of a good friend of mine who has Alzheimer's, and my daughter and she have been friends since she did not have that health issue. And just reminding us as a group that there's some developmental similarities between young kids and older people. You certainly don't need me to tell you what those are. But in the work that I do, I think two themes that are really important. one of which is acknowledgement, and another is mastery. So if we take people at the various places they find themselves, sometimes it's a health concern, sometimes it's a developmental consideration, and we acknowledge that, and then we work with those pieces they can do and help them master within those elements, really neat things happen. And a question I've been compelled rather to ask kids recently has just been very open-ended. If you didn't have limitations with resource or school or other things, what would you see God doing in and through you right now? And I would challenge you to ask some kids those questions, because I think you'll find, much like the panel said, that there's really important wisdom coming from children right now. And I asked some of those questions before I had the chance to be in Malta, and I felt God tell me to ask other children since returning from there. And I am so amazed how many people, how many children, who in fact are people, very important people, are saying single word answers like prayer. I mean, I want to pray. I want to lead. I want to help other children. And so they're really, really precious people. Lots of other neat things to share, but it's a good question to ask.
Can you repeat that question?
You could just ask any variation of, hey, if you didn't have limitations or resource, school right now, what would you have God do through you right now?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now you've heard kind of a lot of input, but let's at your table, each of us are from different contexts, but how, you might say, number one, are you already engaged in some way across generations? If you are, you might share some. If you're not, how could you see that happening in your context? How would that look from where you're? And then we're gonna just come up with maybe some observations that we could share with the group. One per table, like a key thing that will come out of your discussion. So we'll have about, maybe about just 5 minutes. So it's not a lot of time to talk, but just quickly kind of go around 5 to 7 minutes, and then we'll pull everybody together and get one thing shared from each of the tables before we come to break.